Oh, hi there. Welcome back. This is a Romeo. No, it's a Arturo Fuente turned into a tenor Frankie. It's actually really, really nice. So maybe a little long-winded again today. I want to go through stuff that people know and stuff that people don't know. I think I've said it before, one of the joys of ukulele was the fact that you don't need music theory. You just don't. You put your fingers here and you strum and music comes out. It's really, really nice. But, at some point somebody's going to say to you, oh, can you play an A? And you're like, I don't know what that is. Or the other way around. And you're like, dude, I got like level 25 piano conservatory. Can you show me what all of this is? And at the same time, with people who know things and just want to see it applied to a different instrument. Hey, I play clarinet. What are the notes? All right, so I'm not going to run down. There's a whole million great tutorials on like mastering the fretboard and learning the fretboard, but let's talk about some things that people don't generally talk about on the ukulele sites, or I haven't seen a whole bunch of that. The big issue I had as a beginning teacher, especially teaching guitar players or even bass players, was tab. They all know tab because they learned on tab, and I know notation. I know standard. I know the dots. And we fight. I'm like, okay, here's some music. And they're like, well, I can't read that. Can you write it out in tab? And I'm like, I don't want to write out tab. Learn how to read music. And vice versa. I don't read tab that strong because I learned. And you could tend to get a sort of attitude about, well, one's better than the other and one makes more sense than the other. And you know what? Go ahead and learn them both. I mean, at least understand them both. Guitar players who read tab have an amazing ability to transfer notes very, very, very quickly. And they don't know the names of the notes. You go, okay, what note is this? And they go, oh, that's two. That's a two note. At the same time, there is some stuff and some complexities that can't be handled into tab that it's nice to know about notation. So instead of fighting with everybody, let's try and bring the worlds a little bit closer together. So the first thing I want to talk about, I've referenced it several times. Well, let's back up a track. If you don't read music and someone has tried to teach you music, they have probably hit you with the phrase, oh, it's easy. It's super simple. It makes perfect sense. Well, it doesn't. And you can stop that right now. And by the way, if you're a music teacher, stop telling people there are some really, really huge logical hiccups in the way that music notation works. And when you show it to people who don't read it, and when you show it to children, the brain tries to put some sense to it and it doesn't make sense, and that causes a huge frustration. So let's start with the basics. It doesn't make sense. There are things that are screwed up in it. And my advice to people is stop trying to make sense of it. Learn what people tell you. Try and process. And instead of saying, well, that must work because this, or I understand that if this happens, then this happens. That's not how music is. I'm sorry. I mean, we're dealing with 1,000 years of some really, really old dudes who may not have even understood music itself, came up with a system that we're using. It's inherently broken. We're never going to fix it. You just have to kind of roll with it sometimes. Let's start with this. These are the notes. There are 12 pitches. If you count here, you're going to get 13. Why? Because there's a C here and there's a C here. And you're going to go, wait a minute. If I count, I got a whole lot more than that. Yeah. Let's start with this. The first note of there is no first note of a chromatic scale, but in terms of learning how to read music and making things as simple as possible, we start on C. Why do we start on C? Because it's screwed up. We should start on A. That would make sense. We don't. The musical alphabet goes C all the way to G, and then we have an A. Why is A the sixth note? Because they screwed up. First note here is a C. My next note, chromatically, and we can discuss that term later on, there's a C sharp and a D flat. Which one is it? It's both. It's the same note. Here, watch this. This is a C. Here you go. Finger. Third string open. That's a C. Put my finger here. That's a C sharp. But it's also a D flat. Why is it both? Don't tell me it's easy. Don't tell me it makes sense. There's no reason for that to happen. All right. Then we got a D. And then the next one here, we got a D sharp and E flat. And you think to yourself, okay, well, I guess if this makes sense, well, then this must make sense too. What's sharp mean? Sharp means a little bit higher. So this is a C, and this is a little bit higher. This is a D, and this is a little bit lower. What does flat mean? It means a little bit lower. So that's why this note here is a little bit higher than C, but it's also a little bit lower than D, and therefore it's the same note with two names. Does it need two names? Oh, yeah. All right, so you're like, okay, totally makes sense. C, higher. D, lower. E, lower. D. Okay, we're sort of seeing a pattern here, and then this happens. E, what's the next note? F. Why? Because it doesn't make sense. There is no sharp and flat between these two. You've seen a piano keyboard? You notice how there's not a black key in between? That's one of the spots here. And then we go back to starting to like, oh, this makes sense. F, a little higher. Good. G, a little bit higher. A, a little bit higher. They both have two names. All three of them have two names. And we got a B. And a B a little bit higher is a C. Those are the notes. Is that too much? Yeah, it's too much. You don't need that much. But if you did, take your first string and go C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. You'd end up at this fret here. It's got the two dots here. That's the 12th fret. That's the octave fret. So here's my C, and here's my C. Now in terms of learning how to read music or learning your fretboard, that's a simple place to start. Not with all of the notes in between, but knowing that if this is a G, this must be a G, but it's high. This is a C. We talked about this when buying a ukulele. These are your intonation points. It's also the same notes. So, okay, good. From those notes, we do something called, we build scales. And scales are kind of the building blocks in terms of making melodies and making harmonies. We need to know our scales. The most used scale, the most common scale, the scale everybody wants us to know is the major scale. Major scale is eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's made up of a pattern, tones and semitones. And it's always this pattern. Every single scale has this exact same pattern. What's a tone? Well, first of all, let's discuss that depending on where you live, a tone could be a step, could be a whole step. It could actually also be a whole step. Thanks. I call them tones. It's the same word. And semitones. Semitones are half steps, half tones, and in some weird places in the world, you get a semi-step. I was once in a band, and a Scottish conductor screamed at me about semi-steps. I don't have no idea what he was saying, but he just kept yelling at semi-step. I don't know what that was. Finally, somebody leans over and goes, he's talking about a semitone, dude. All right. So, if we build this collaboration, we have ourselves a major scale. What does that mean? I'm going to do it on one string, and we're going to start on C string because it makes the most sense. So, I have a C. My little chart here says to go up a tone. This is a semitone, and this is a tone. That's literally all it is. At any point on your fretboard here, if you are playing this note here, and you go up one step, you went up a semitone. If you go up 1, 2 steps, you went up a tone. That's the difference. So, open a C. I got a tone here. I got a tone here. I'm going to go to my 5th fret dot. That's a semitone. Up a tone here. Up a tone here. Up a tone here. And if I did it right, I should end up at my 12th fret double dotted. And I got a C scale. What's the C scale look like? Well, the reason we do a C scale is because it looks like this. C, D, E, F, G. Forget this little thing here, like my marker slipped. Now, this is the only major scale that looks like this. Every other major scale is going to have a sharp in it, or it's going to have a flat in it, or it's going to have more than that. But in terms of notes, and the reason from a theory point of view we started on a C scale is because it is all tones without sharps and flats. It makes the most sense to us. So again, learning the fretboard, I have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Am I ever going to play that on one string? No, I'm not, because it doesn't make sense as far as learning how to play an instrument. I'm going to play it on these strings here. Now, if I was a guitar player, I would use the 4 strings. Our lowest note on the ukulele is that third string right there, that open C, that's as low as we can get. So it's a nice place to start in terms of scales. And then I'm simply just going to move up. So I have a C, 2nd fret D. Sorry, figure out where your fingers go. C, 2nd fret D. My second string is an open E. That's what I want. Now, 1st fret there gives me an F. 3rd fret gives me a G. Notice I use my 3rd finger. I want an A, which is my open bottom string. I want a B, which is 2nd. And my top note C is 3rd. So the whole variation for this scale here is in fact open 2 switch strings, open 1, 3, switch strings, open 2, 3. And you're going to play that entire scale in these 3 frets. You've actually now created a movable shape. So that movable shape can be take those 3 strings and anywhere on the ukulele you're going to be able to play there. And my next note is a tone. It needs a 4th fret to do that, but essentially all I'm doing is taking that same shape and moving it somewhere else on the ukulele neck. So this here is my first note, and I don't even have to know what that first note is. My next note is going to be up a tone. My next one's going to be down a string on the same one that I started on. Then I'm going to move over 1 fret because it's a tone, 2 frets, down a string to the starting fret. Whoops. You get the idea. Have some fun. Play some major scales. Figure out what your notes are. Frank's just saw a bird, so she's going to... Anyways, hit like and subscribe. I know this was a bit long, but a lot of information that goes out on here. And we're headed to more fun stuff. Once you kind of understand where this goes, we can go to the next step. Hit like and subscribe. Drink Dr. Pepper. That got nasty. Anyways, take care. Bye.